Section: Introduction. In this section, we explore the development of artificial intelligence aimed at mimicking the remarkable cognitive abilities of the human brain. We recognize that a network of interconnected neural cells allows for complex thinking and problem-solving by processing inputs and generating outputs. Learning and memory occur through electric signals that travel between neurons, facilitating decision-making. In simpler artificial neural networks, these signals are represented by a matrix of weights and biases, which serve as inputs for a nonlinear function at each neuron. Basic networks consist of an input layer, one or more hidden layers, and an output layer. We achieve learning through a method called backpropagation. While artificial neural networks are a form of problem-solving strategy, early models like the perceptron, which only had input and output neurons, were too simplistic and could not solve certain logical problems, leading to a decline in interest in the late 1960s. Despite advancements in technology in the 1980s, practical applications remained limited. It wasn't until the rise of the Internet and the need to process large datasets in the 2010s that significant progress was made. Deep learning, which still relies on backpropagation, has allowed for the training of large networks. We note that early studies, such as those on the Hopfield model, highlighted the connection between neural network complexity and disordered systems, sparking interest in statistical physics. Most research has focused on factors that hinder optimization and learning, such as network architecture and initial conditions, while less attention has been given to the geometry of the state space and the energy landscape. To deepen our understanding of neural networks, we examine the relationship between energy and entropy during phase transitions, identifying inflection points in the entropy curve as indicators of these transitions. Given the complexity of modern networks, we choose to study a small network capable of solving the XOR problem, consisting of 2 input neurons, 1 output neuron, and 2 hidden neurons, allowing us to conduct extensive tests. We focus on the loss landscape within the high-dimensional parameter space, visualizing its cross-sections to gain insights that could enhance optimization performance. We compare loss landscapes to potential energy landscapes in physical systems and investigate how their shape affects optimization dynamics. Our study aims to clarify the complexities of backpropagation convergence. The paper is structured as follows. We introduce the neural network and XOR logic, review the optimization process in one section, present our findings on convergence dynamics and loss landscape features in another, and conclude with a summary. Section Summary. In this section, we explore the historical development and complexities of artificial neural networks, emphasizing their evolution from simple models like the perceptron to advanced deep learning architectures. We focus on understanding the loss landscape and its impact on optimization dynamics, particularly through the study of a minimal network capable of solving the XOR problem, which allows us to gain insights into the learning processes of larger, more complex networks. Section: XOR Neural Network Model and Optimization. In this section, we utilize a straightforward artificial neural network to tackle the XOR problem. We present the binary inputs and outputs for all 4 cases in a table. While we could easily modify this basic setup for different logical behaviors or add complexity by considering multiple outputs, we choose to keep it simple for detailed analysis of network optimization. Since a perceptron with just 1 hidden neuron cannot memorize all 4 cases, we increase the number of hidden neurons. We denote the number of hidden neurons as 2. Our simplest network consists of 2 input neurons, 2 hidden neurons, and 1 output neuron, totaling 6 connections, each with a weight parameter. We also assign a bias parameter to the hidden and output neurons. This creates a 9-dimensional optimization problem to approximate the truth table. For comparison, we also explore larger networks with up to 3 hidden neurons. We label the weight connecting a specific neuron in one layer to another in the next layer as an element of the weight matrix. In our simple network, we define the hidden layer and output layer accordingly. The bias for a specific neuron is also symbolized. We introduce an auxiliary vector with elements representing the number of neurons linked to a particular neuron in the output layer. The activation value of this neuron is determined using the sigmoid function, which helps break linearity. Although other activation functions like ReLU are popular for larger networks due to their efficiency, we find the sigmoid function suitable for our binary problem, as it provides well-behaved gradients for optimization. Initially, we set the weights and biases to random values. For each case from the table, we calculate the activations in a forward pass from input to output. Our setup does not include a data postprocessor, so the output is directly calculated. One learning step involves multiple forward passes yielding outputs for our problem, which consists of a set of 4 cases. We can either use the complete sequence of cases or randomly select them for our batch, though mini batches are not necessary due to the small number of cases. To measure how well our network performs, we define a total loss function that quantifies the deviation of calculated outputs from the true ones. The network is considered effective if this total loss is close to 0. Since the complexity of neural networks makes it difficult to find optimal weights and biases analytically, we use a backpropagation method. Any deviation from 0 in the loss can be traced back to the weights and biases, so we adjust these values following the negative gradient to reduce loss in future learning steps. We introduce a learning rate to control the adjustment speed. We also explore alternative optimization methods, such as zero-temperature Monte Carlo sampling, where we randomly update parameters and keep changes that lower the loss. The atom optimizer, which adapts learning rates for individual parameters, is another popular method we compare against our results from standard gradient descent. While our focus is on exploring the geometric properties of the state space, we also estimate microcanonical entropy using Monte Carlo sampling methods. Simple random sampling of the parameter space suffices, but we confirm results with a generalized ensemble importance sampling method, combining the Wang-Landau algorithm with multi-canonical sampling. Section Summary. In this section, we employ a simple artificial neural network to address the XOR problem, utilizing a network with 2 input neurons, 2 hidden neurons, and 1 output neuron, while optimizing the weights and biases through backpropagation. We compare various optimization methods, including standard gradient descent and the atom optimizer, to analyze the network's performance and convergence dynamics, while also employing Monte Carlo sampling for estimating microcanonical entropy. Section: Optimization characteristics of the XOR network and loss landscape. In this section, we explore the optimization characteristics of the XOR network and how the learning rate affects network performance. Through extensive testing, we found that a perceptron with just 1 hidden neuron is unable to solve the XOR problem due to insufficient capacity to remember all cases. Adding a second hidden neuron, as illustrated in our figure, allows the network to start solving the problem, although it still requires many training epochs. We observed the loss function converging towards 0 for various learning rates. We initialized weights and biases randomly, which caused fluctuations due to the random selection of batch members. If we had used fixed batches, the loss curves would have been smoother. The learning rate significantly impacts the optimization process, but convergence only occurs within a specific range. Our tests indicated that convergence begins after a certain number of epochs, with initial loss values fluctuating before a more stable learning phase begins. We identified 3 main phases in the optimization process. Initially, the loss fluctuates around a certain value, which is influenced by our initial parameter settings. Then, we see a sharp drop into a more stable area of the loss landscape, where larger learning rates help the optimization process move faster. Eventually, the process slows down and follows a power law, with the exponent depending on the number of hidden neurons rather than the learning rate. We compiled optimal parameter values for our network, which serve as a foundation for further discussion. We also noted that there are many other parameter sets that can yield similar low loss values, indicating a continuous space of solutions. A key observation in our optimization process is that we cannot reach 0 loss in a finite number of epochs. As we progress through epochs, weights and biases continue to drift. This raises questions about how the truncation point of our optimization affects the network's performance on unseen data. We noticed that after an initial phase of little change, a sudden shift occurs when the loss drops rapidly. This shift is initiated by changes in the weights of the first hidden neuron, which then influences the output neuron. Interestingly, even after achieving convergence, the parameters keep changing. We found that using the atom optimizer yields similar results but converges more quickly than stochastic gradient descent. Despite the parameter drifts, the output consistently converges to expected results across different cases. To further understand the convergence dynamics, we examined what happens when we shift one parameter away from its optimal value while keeping others constant. We defined the epoch of convergence as the number of epochs needed to reach our optimal solution. Our findings revealed that all curves exhibit a plateau near their optimal values, suggesting that optimal solutions exist in a region of nearly zero loss. We also discovered that shifting certain weights and biases does not affect convergence, indicating a continuous solution space in the loss landscape. Some parameter shifts resulted in slower convergence but remain stable, hinting at plateaus at higher loss values. Section summary. In this section, we demonstrate that a perceptron with a single hidden neuron cannot solve the XOR problem due to insufficient capacity, while adding a second hidden neuron allows for convergence, albeit requiring many epochs and influenced by the learning rate. We observe distinct phases in the optimization process, revealing that convergence dynamics are affected by the initial parameter settings and that a continuous space of solutions exists within the loss landscape, characterized by plateaus around optimal values. Section: Analysis of the loss landscape. In this section, we analyze the characteristics of cross-sections through the loss landscape. We compare results from using both full non-randomized and randomized batches to calculate loss during forward passes. For the non-randomized batch, we define loss as the average of the squared differences between actual and expected output values across all input cases for a specific set of parameters. This means the loss function is influenced by all parameters and can be visualized as a landscape in a 9-dimensional space. To illustrate this, we calculated 36 cross-sections where 7 of the 9 parameters are held constant at their optimal values, while 2 are varied over a wide range. We present cross-sections for 6 different pairs of variable parameters. All 36 cross-sections show significant differences, but the selected ones highlight the most distinct features. It's important to note that while the landscapes differ for other solutions, they share similar main characteristics. We also include examples of backpropagation trajectories starting from random points. For these trajectories, we used the complete non-randomized batch and applied the steepest descent method only to the 2 variable parameters, keeping the other 7 constant. The most notable features in our figures are channels, plateaus, and isolated rims and wells, with loss values between 19 and 20, separated by steep slopes. We explain these prominent loss values. Zero loss occurs only when all network outputs match their expected values. In the cross-sections, the zero loss point is located at 144, with regions close to zero shown in dark blue. An isolated well surrounds this point in most cross-sections, except in one case where it appears at the corner of a shallow triangular region. In one figure, we observe a deep trench with very low loss values leading to the zero loss point. Loss values around 145 typically arise when one case in the batch is misclassified. These regions are often represented as straight channels or plateaus. When 2 outputs are correct and 2 are wrong, the loss value is 126, representing the highest entropy situation with many possible combinations. Consequently, yellow plateaus around this loss value dominate the figures, while higher loss values are less common. We note that all real loss values between 19 and 20 are possible due to the continuous nature of the sigmoid output, but near the optimal solution, we see distinct shapes in the cross-sections. For problems with more than 4 cases, the landscape features become more varied. Thanks to sigmoid activations, all plateaus, channels, and trenches have slight slopes, indicating a gradient toward lower loss values. Examining selected convergence trajectories reveals interesting patterns. We use the complete non-randomized batch for smooth trajectories, with red markers indicating starting points. The learning rate is typically set to 5, and we stop the simulation upon reaching zero loss or a limit of 150 million epochs. In one figure, we show two different trajectories. The first starts at a loss value of 152 and quickly descends to a lower level, eventually converging to the zero loss point. In contrast, the second trajectory, also starting at a loss of 152, gets stuck at a local minimum due to a barrier preventing further convergence. Another figure illustrates a trajectory that successfully navigates a barrier to reach the basin of convergence. We also observe two trajectories initialized close together, where one converges to the optimum while the other diverges and remains trapped in a local minimum. This divergence hints at potential chaotic behavior in larger networks as landscape shapes become more fragmented. Importantly, our backpropagation method is deterministic, following the steepest descent without any stochastic elements. Section Summary. In this section, we analyze the loss landscape by comparing non-randomized and randomized batch calculations, revealing distinct features such as channels, plateaus, and wells in the 9-dimensional parameter space. Our findings indicate that convergence trajectories can vary significantly based on initial conditions, highlighting the complexity of optimization in neural networks. Section: Randomized Batches. In this section, we explore the use of randomized batches in training large neural networks, where using the full batch is often impractical. We utilize the full batch with randomized cases to analyze the loss landscape. Due to the random sampling of batch compositions, the loss landscape appears fuzzy in a single scan, as illustrated in Figure A, where two parameters vary while others remain constant. In contrast, the smooth cross-section in Figure A comes from a non-randomized batch. Despite the fluctuations, we can still see the main features of the landscape. After averaging over 100 scans, as shown in Figure B, we find that the landscape shape aligns with the non-randomized batch results, confirming that randomization is a valid approach that does not change the essential features of the landscape, including the attraction basin towards the optimal solution. Next, we discuss the density of loss and microcanonical entropy. In statistical physics, the density of states helps identify key thermodynamic features like phase transitions. We define the density of loss in our context, replacing energy with loss, and introduce a dimensionless microcanonical entropy. This curve reflects the activation steps needed in the learning process to overcome barriers towards achieving the learning goal. We view learning as an annealing process transitioning from high entropy states to a low energy optimal solution. Our approach covers the entire state space while being a function of a single variable, simplifying the analysis of the loss landscape. We present microcanonical entropies for networks with a specific number of neurons, revealing why a perceptron struggles with the XOR problem. There are no zero loss states in its parameter space. For networks with more hidden neurons, we find multiple zero loss parameter sets, with the largest entropy around certain values, indicating expected peaks from our earlier discussions. Interestingly, we observe a strong suppression of loss values in between these peaks, contributing to the complexity of the learning process. Networks with fewer hidden neurons show additional minor peaks, which correspond to plateaus in the loss landscape and slow down optimization. However, larger networks can navigate these entropic barriers more effectively, enhancing learning efficiency. As we increase the number of hidden neurons, the entropic effects diminish, suggesting a smoother learning process in larger networks. In terms of thermodynamic phase transitions, convex regions in the microcanonical entropy indicate first-order transitions, which are linked to latent heat in physical systems. We propose that these convex regions may also slow down learning processes in neural networks. Future research will focus on larger networks, anticipating that the peaks and negative slopes in the entropy curve will diminish, leading to smoother curves that may reveal higher-order transitions. We expect that the statistical properties of larger artificial neural networks will closely mirror those of complex physical systems.